they get older, will be able to have where they can have internships during the school year. But again, I want to emphasize that it's not just open for Life Mill STEAM students, but also the Woodland Hills students will be able to take advantage of these executive experiences. And finally, some of the partners that we want to lift up tonight, we have the Hines Endowments, who provided a generous grant for us to be able to do planning. Eden Hall Foundation, likewise. Carnegie Science Center, which you will see in a moment, served as a place for our young men, which some of Woodland Hills students participated in a 9-month program that we did called Life STEAM Saturdays, where we did it 2 Saturdays a month from September to May. And you will see some of the young men talking about their experience there at Carnegie Science Center. And the Science Center then will be one of our partners who will have some aspect on our campus. So again, your students will be able to have some of the best technology made available to them. University of Pittsburgh, the School of Education, as well as the Center for Urban Education, have been very helpful with us to help us to begin to develop our curriculum. Robert Morris University, their Black Male Leadership Development Institute, which some of your students, again, have already participated in. CCAC, with their dual programs, are also one of our partners. Foundation Inc., which is the organization that helped us to write the charter. The representatives are here tonight with us as we go into our question and answer period. But it is an organization that helps schools and after-school programs across the country. And we are very glad to have them as a partner with us. Of course, the Remake Learning Council, Fireman Creative Drafting Dreams, Journey to Medicine program, where many of your students, again, have participated in learning how what it takes to become a doctor. FaithWorks Inc., Yamaha, which is one of the major institutions in our country, has served with equipment and other things to help us to get on board, as well as Intel. Our projected enrollment grades will be added that are in each year. Year 1, which is our projection is 2020, we're going to start with 6th and 7th grade. And then in year 2, we will add 8th grade and so on and so forth. In year 5, we will be up to 11th grade. And then in year 6 will be our first graduating class, will be the class of 2026. And then that same year, we will add K1. Over a 10-year period, the school will ramp up to a K-12 academy. It will be the only K-12 academy with a STEAM-focused male population in the region. Also, we want you to experience life. Again, we project to open in the fall of 2020. Registration will begin in the winter of 2020 for rising 6th and 7th grade male scholars. And then again, our first graduating class will be in the year 2026. We want to share with you now a very short video of the young men, the young scholars who participated in our Life STEAM Saturdays. They participated with this program.
So I tried to make a paper sorter where you can hold like certain important documents or letters or bills, something that you won't want to keep track of. I tried to make one for my mom because she's leaving papers everywhere. I go to the kitchen table, there's like 3 different papers. There's 3 papers laying around when I'm trying to eat. So I tried to make a paper sorter where you can hold your papers. When I was creating my paper sorter on Inkscape, which is a computer software where you can make different objects from a virtual computer. You can add squares, circles, stars, whatever you want, really. So I made a paper sorter using it, but I ran into a lot of difficulties making it. For example, one day I spent 20 minutes trying to get my computer back online, and my final project, I made my overall canvas too small, so my project didn't come out of scale, so no papers are really fit. I didn't have time to remake it, but I've learned from my mistakes. The project was supposed to be like 8.5 inches by 12 inches or something like that. I learned from my mistakes, and if I have an opportunity to make one again, I'll try to make it better.
and everything that's not black, the individual spider itself is going to get cut out. So basically, we're going to get a spider that has some etched on it, but you're actually still going to get a spider on its own with those type of legs, with the body and everything that's there.
This is the 3D printer?
No, this is laser cutter. And you see, it's forming the top leg right there. So any black going up and down and side to side, so it's going up and down to see how much black is and which black is there. And then it's going side to side to etch everything in so it can get enough space and enough distance so that it gets every single line right. So my project is a 5x7, so we'll stop at 5. Wait, okay, so 7's right there and 5's right there, so that's how big the spider's going to be. As you see on the screen.
That. What is this printer? The laser printer did that.
Yeah. I'm about to make initials for my grandfather using Inkscape. As I went through this, the hardest part was just making it deep enough so that you can put like things inside of it, but also not making it too deep where the things would fall out the front or out go all the way to the bottom. Like how would you test it to make sure that it wasn't too deep? Okay, I would pretty much mainly just look at it from this view. And so if you see the box, so like you see how I can move it around the inside. If you ever saw it like come out this far or up here, like down there, then you would know. But like that, it was out of place. How's the program that you're using now to show all this? This is Tinkercad.
You're working on this? You're putting this right now. What is it?
So this is Steelers logo.
Steelers logo. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, I made a 3D printed pencil holder. Using this pencil holder, I had to download an image offline, and I had to make the pencil holder wider, and I had to make it the height smaller. So what I did was I downloaded it onto here using Tinkercad, and I made it smaller. And using the 3D printer, it took 3 hours to make, but because it prints layer by layer like a fishing line, but it's a plastic filament. And this holds, it was worth it because it holds markers, pens, and pencils.
We just wanted to provide an example of the learning environment that we want to provide at Life Mill STEAM Academy. Thank you for your time. This ends our presentation.
Thank you. I did not want to interrupt the presenters, but at the outset of your presentation, we were joined by another board member, Mrs. Seligson. So, Dr. Kennedy, Reverend Kennedy, anything further from you before I open it up for public comment?
No. This concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Board members, Mr. Harris, are there any questions you want to ask before we proceed to public comment?
I have a couple questions. Dr. Kennedy? All right. So I met with you and a few other folks about a couple months ago, maybe?
May.
Okay. May? No. Was it May?
No,
September.
I got here in August.
September, I'm sorry.
All right. A couple months ago. Read through the application very well. I mean, very long, very detailed. Had some questions. One, and these are in no particular order. I just had some questions here. In your experience, you run camps, programs, correct?
We've run two thus far.
The science camps that you just showed. What's your experience in running a more broader, inclusive, educational type operation Like a camp is different because you do a pamphlet, a flyer, you recruit students who want to come, and they're very engaged in that. But in a school setting, it's much different. And what I'm getting at is, what's your plan to work with children who have special needs, who you may not have experienced at your camps? Like, what if a student has an IEP or they ADHD, they're all autistic? I mean, what's your plan? Would you accept those students? Because I know you're doing a lottery. Because at the public school level, that's what we deal with. And the last part of that question is, I'm not sure, is your school for black males or all males? Because when we met and reading through it, I see that there's an emphasis on the black male, and then from time to time you say, well, all are invited. So I'm just curious, with a lottery system, would you put quotas or caps or limitations on the ethnicities of students who can apply to your school? Because the first year you're going to have 70 and 70 per grade. I saw in your report. So one, what's your plan to engage the students with special needs? And two, is the school's focus to assist African American males in the STEM areas, or all males who apply to enter the school?
In the first year of the operation of the school, we will have a full-time special education teacher, as well as a coordinator, a full-time coordinator. And in addition to that, we will have a math and reading specialist. We will also have smaller classrooms. And so these are the things we will have in place year one to accommodate students with special needs. Mr. Harris, does that...
Well, when I say special needs, it could run from ADHD to autism to various handicaps. I mean, it runs the full gamut that we deal with in schools. So a reading specialist would help with reading.
Right.
A math coach would help with math. I'm talking about students who have various levels of support needed in their IEPs, maybe a one-to-one aid. Mm-hmm. Maybe they can be an inclusive session or not. Mm-hmm. How would those students fit into your overall plan? Because that's where the public schools struggle with support and funding.
Is that more of a budgeting? Okay.
My name is Tony Cost. I'm from Foundations, Inc. If you need an address, 31 Downing Street, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. First of all, admission is by lottery. If there are more students enrolling at a grade level than there are seats, then there is a lottery. In terms of once we have our student population, we will seek to identify all students who have special needs. We do that by gathering information from parents. We do that by gathering information from teachers. We look at prior records. We, as was mentioned, we have a special education teacher, a full-time teacher, and a full-time special ed coordinator. There will be a child study team. An IEP will be developed for all students with special needs. We will, as much as possible, provide those services within the school. Where we cannot provide services in the school, we will bring the needed personnel in, or we will make arrangements for programs outside the school to service those students.
So you would not have those kids within your school then?
No, I said as much as possible, we would first attempt to address their needs in the school.
Right.
Okay. Pull-out services, push-in services, small group instruction. Part of our in-service would be special education teachers providing instruction for regular classroom teachers on how to meet the needs of special education students in their classes. We would incorporate special education students in the regular classroom, the least restrictive environment, as much as possible.
And what if, as much as possible, but what if you could not?
Then again, we would address the needs identified in their IEP either through pull-out services, through special small group instruction with the two special education teachers. We would bring in specialists if the need arises, or in some cases we may have to send a student to a different setting.
When you say a different setting, what do you mean?
Where the proper service, where the needed service can be provided.
So they would not be at the school?
For a period of time.
Okay. Next question that I have. Thank you. What's your plan to staff and recruit teachers, support folks?
I want to answer your other question that you had.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The school is for all males, and that's a part of our mission statement. But we are going to focus a lot of attention on the underrepresented in the STEM pipeline, which is African American males. So all males are welcome to participate in the school, but we are going to put a strong emphasis on trying to help those who are underserved in the STEM pipeline.
All right. So is the application process weighted on race?
Nope.
So how can you ensure that you're going to have African American males? I mean, what if out of 200 applicants, 150 are white?
I live here, and I know the community, and I believe that we'll get a good range of people that will apply for this school. So I just believe, and based on the number of students who come, whatever their race is, we're going to educate them.
All right, so right now Woodland Hills is 60-40 pretty much. African American 60, 40% white. If you look at the data, then the application pool would probably be close to that. So how welcome would a white student feel?
As welcome as African American students feel in other schools. And we're going to make sure that every child feels that they are loved and respected no matter what their race or nationality is.
All right. Next question. Back to the recruiting. What's your plan to staff and find high-quality teachers in this state because of the lack of folks now majoring in education?
We're not going to be limited to Pennsylvania. We want to do national searches, but we're going to use some other organizations to help us, such as Call Me Mister and Clemson University. We have relationships with other universities and others who have been recruiting teachers to come for the education.
Okay, but they have to be licensed in the state
absolutely.
of Pennsylvania.
Oh, absolutely.
So what's your experience in getting professionals licensed to teach in this state?
Would you mind rephrasing your question, Mr. Harris?
Well, in order to teach in the state, you have to, or really work in education, you have to be certified in some area approved by PDE, Department of Ed. So I'm asking, if you're going to recruit out of state, there are a number of reciprocal agreements, but what is your experience or expertise from the board that you have in recruiting from outside the state and then getting them through the certification process?
We would work with teachers, potential teachers that we recruit to bring into this system and make sure that they meet all requirements for certification to be a teacher at Life Mill STEAM Academy. So we would recruit with enough time to make sure that we are able to go through that process with them so that they will meet those requirements. Okay. And I guess to more pointedly, we've not had that experience yet. We are going to begin our recruiting process. And as stated, we plan to also go outside of the state, but we definitely want to make sure that we take advantage of the teacher education programs right here in our city. We have some very good institutions right here, very good teacher education programs, so we want to make sure that we exhaust all of our resources right here as well.
Okay.
Part of our collaboration with the University of Pittsburgh and some of the other schools of education, they are going to assist us with professional development and other ways to make sure that these teachers are licensed. But also we're going to be able to, because of the campus and the Village of Life, we're going to be able to have PhD students and others that will be on our campus working with our students. So again, we'll be able to have what I would say the best practices, cutting edge educational talent available to us. We're not going to disregard everyone in the state of Pennsylvania. So we will, but we want to limit ourselves to that as well.
All right. I just have two more questions. What's your timeline, not on recruitment of students, but on the whole plan? You had it's about 5 to 10 years to get the students to get to the level that you want for enrollment. But what's your plan on creating the village? Because with 70 students, 140 students the first year, adding 70, 77 each year, what's your plan on making, when will it be what you envision? What's your timeline on that?
With the village itself, is not dependent upon the number of students that we have. So we are looking at within 5 years of the beginning of the school to have most of the components of the village in place.
Okay. All right. And last question I have. You mentioned a number of partnerships with Woodland Hills. Outside of me and the former superintendent, who else has worked on your plan from Woodland Hills?
I didn't say that anyone did, other than me meeting with you and the other superintendent. But we have people in the community that we've been working with who have students in your system. So we're here tonight to begin to forge a relationship with your board. And of course, what we do in the city, we have many teachers that work in Woodland Hills School District that we are affiliated with.
Well, I just asked because you mentioned a number of things that we could do together, but this is the first time I've heard of it. And if we're going to really have a collaboration, it would be nice if I could bring some staff, my administrators could sit down with my assistant superintendent, my curriculum folks, my athletic director, the principals who are going to be impacted by this program, to work together to share what we could actually do. I mean, when we met, we talked about food service, transportation, custodial maintenance, the operational side, maintenance on buildings, things like that. But we never discussed sharing labs or anything like that you mentioned during the presentation. So my concern is I would like to have my staff also to be included on things that you're selling us on with the program. So.
I agree with you, and I welcome that. This is a ground floor opportunity. We are looking to start projected in a year and a half from now. So I would love to meet with your staff. We don't have it all figured out how we can collaborate, but we want to certainly get input from you and from your staff so that we can work together. What we want to propose, Mr. Harris and board members, is a collaborative effort that it can be a win-win for all of us. But we realize, and I agree with you, that we're not going to bring everything to the table, that we want to also listen and learn from you and from your staff so that we can work together. And our ultimate goal is to provide the best educational opportunities for the students at Life Mill STEAM Academy as well as Woodland Hills.
Last question I have that we deal with, and I ran charters and I understand. What do you do with the discipline problems? if two boys, and it's boys, fight, what do you do with them? I know what we do here in other schools, but what do you do with boys who are just different neighborhoods? You get two different neighborhood boys, just don't like each other because they're from different sides of town, and they just can't get along. They fight. What's your discipline? Because that wasn't in the report. When we look at the total program, what happens when on the discipline side? Where do they go?
Well, we're not here to try to suspend boys. We want to try to help them. We want to try to give them some type of conflict resolution, to try to help them the best way that we can. We are going to put some things into place from the very beginning to understand what the responses will be to the various things. But we do have that as a part of our application that we gave you. Yep. So we're going to do the best that we can. Certainly, we know that discipline is important. However, we're going to try to do the very best that we can to make sure that the students will have an opportunity to remain in school.
Okay.
Oh, you can talk about that.
We're not interested. I'm a former principal, and I've had my share of two students fighting, not always males. We plan to implement a restorative practices in a discipline policy. While we have a list of infractions and consequences, the effort will be on making whole both parties. How does that other person feel? How do you feel? Peer mediation, post-conflict resolution. Our goal would be to have no student suspended. That's a lofty goal, but that's what we would strive for. We're not looking to punish. We're looking to teach and resolve.
Thank you. Dr. Kennedy, I have one question. Your PowerPoint presentation showed us a long-term plan of K to 12. Your charter application, unless I'm just not finding it, it appears that it's focused upon grades 6 through 11.
Right.
So are you asking this board for a charter for K to 12 or a charter for 6 to 11?
Charter runs for 5 years, so it'll be from 6th to 11th, and then we will come back at the year 5 to go to K-12.
Thank you. Board members, any questions?
Yes, I noticed in your budget pages that your first year operating budget is $2.4 million that you anticipate coming from the Woodland Hills School District. So do you not intend taking any students from any other districts?
No, certainly not. We're going to have students from other school districts, but we have our person here to talk about our budget.
Good evening. Craig Butler, address is 804 Longacre Boulevard, Yeadon, Pennsylvania. To answer your question, the budget is, I'd first say, is a conservative budget, and it assumes that the population of students will come from various school districts in the area. The rate, the tuition rate that's being used for this purpose is the rate of Woodland Hills School District. Any students that would come in from other school districts, those rates would be used in the calculation of invoicing.
Okay, so sorry, I'm just trying to find the page where it says okay, so you anticipated, so when it says Woodland Hills School District, okay, maybe I misread that, but my reading of it was anticipating that it was that $2.4 million would be coming from us. Okay.
No, and that goes back to the conversation earlier about the lottery process and where the students are coming from. That's all dictated by the charter law.
Okay, I had a second question, and this is more of a legal question, and because I could not find anything about it when I looked it up. So since you plan on having, in your budget, you have federal revenues, right? So is a school that's receiving federal revenues allowed to be a single-sex school? Since that was struck down at VMI, I believe, was one school that was not allowed to happen. And I know Pennsylvania seems fuzzy, and no one seems to want to take a stand on whether or not that's legal, constitutional to do that for a public school.
Right. Well, I do know in Philadelphia, there's one charter school which is Boys Latin.
That's like one of the only ones I could find. But
yeah, that has been around for a number of years. Outside of that, I'm not the legal expert.
We'll review that issue.
Okay.
In relation to the application.
But we do have the ruling for Boys Latin, and we use that as our...
When was that school founded? I couldn't figure when that was.
I want to say 2000.
Okay, but it's since 1997 when the charter. Okay.
And we visited the school, and we got all the information. So there is a male charter school in Pennsylvania.
If you could furnish that to us to review.
Tangential question. As an all-male school, how would you receive or integrate students who identify as transgender? Because we do have students who identify as transgender.
Yes. We are going to approach that the way we would with a student who was facing any other type of challenge. We would receive them and love them and make sure that teachers understand that we are trying to create an inclusive learning environment and that no one is to be excluded or made to feel different, but inclusion is going to be the buzzword there, because we have had that conversation about that, and we know that it's coming. Does that answer your question?
I think it's challenging to talk about inclusion if you already start by saying we're a male-focused school. That becomes very difficult to talk about inclusion at that point because you're immediately only gathering a certain segment of the population. My follow-up question would be, you had a mandatory parent engagement within your enrollment. One of the difficulties of public school is the fact that we always encourage parent engagement and it's just not there. So what's your process that you do enroll these students and that parent engagement isn't involved? Does the student not come anymore? I mean, because we're always reaching out and saying, hey, let's meet. We have dedicated days within our school year for parents to come and meet the teachers and things like that. But those time periods always, the impact is very low. So you might know something I don't know that can actually help the district. Tell me, how are you forcing your mandatory parent participation policy?
Our initial approach we will not take the stance that we are, and we hope that parents don't receive it in the way that we are forcing them. But that we will initially, as we engage with parents, work to provide a relationship, to instill a relationship between the educators and the parents, and to create an environment where parents feel a part of that community. One of the things that we want to institute is a parent liaison. That parent liaison will help us to recruit other parents and to help us to bridge the gap that you're referring to. And so we are in our approach. We're not going to approach this that we're going to force you a parent, but we're hopeful that in our engaging that parent, that we create that environment where they will want to be a part of their child's learning environment and want to be a part of that community, and not just want to be a part of it, but to be working in it.
I think there's some things that really wasn't thought out fully. Just on that mere question, one of the things we struggle with is the fact that our high school is up in Churchill, because a lot of our community members can't get to Churchill. So your campus destination is Wilkins, which is either further. Bus service is very limited out there for some of our residents down this way to even get there for some of that engagement at specific times and things like that. And we're dealing with 12 different boroughs that it's still difficult for some of our parents just to get to Churchill.
That statistic would be 85% of North Braddock doesn't have a vehicle. 85% of North Braddock doesn't have a vehicle.
So I get philosophically what is trying to be accomplished, but as you start looking and getting into some of the substantive problems that we try to answer on a consistent basis, it's a lot more challenging than putting forth or the way you're putting it forth. And those are some of the, and there's other areas like that too, but that's, I think that's the same with the special needs. One coordinator really won't do justice when you're talking about 140, 200, 300 kids as things start to develop, because right now, it's like 22% of our district kids have an IUP or special needs. So if you take 22% of your first 150, you're looking at a different staffing requirement than is actually just talked about. So those are things that, I feel maybe wasn't considered all the way through or through the process, or just the basic transportation needs. We struggle with transportation actually every day, because we have 92 stops a day. So.
And I understand your pushback, particularly with regard to.
Oh, that's not pushback. That's a question.
The special education, but if you note in our application, in year 2 and 3 and 4, we increase that staffing. As students, the number of students increase, we also increase the number of special education staff. So just
on the question about parental engagement, there are a variety of ways that you get parents engaged, whether it's being mentors to students, the Home and School Association, chaperones on field trips. At least one parent will serve on the board of directors of the school. So there are a variety of ways that we would seek to increase parent engagement. You bring up a good issue, the transportation, and that's something that we will certainly have to address. But we do have a variety of ways that we encourage parents to become involved in the lives of their children.
Certainly, based on the charter school law, that the school district from which the children will be coming from, it's required for them to provide transportation.
I understand that, but if you currently just seen the news, they had a story about 2 days ago where it talked about transportation in the state is lacking. They lack bus drivers. Because bus drivers can no longer get their CDL because the CDL requirements have changed to where, even though they're offering a better pay rate, they're still not finding the bus drivers. And again, one of our troubles is we have about 92 92 to 94 stops a day right now. So now you're in our 95th stop that we would have to still try to find transportation. And that's only one way, because we still have to, we're talking about different boroughs to get, so it'd probably be multiple routes that we would need to get to your school. But I'm saying that is just something that we still have to look at. You talk about a collaboration.
That's what I was about to say.
You can't look at us and say, hey, look, you got to get them up there. And we're already having trouble getting our kids to the current destinations that in this district.
Again, if we can collaborate, we need to talk about all of those type of issues that we have together to see how we can work that out. But I think that through the collaboration, and I have other partners that we'll bring to the table, and that might be one of the issues that might be able to help alleviate some of your problems as well. So we can look at it from a collaborative standpoint. Again, we don't have all the answers, but we thought this thing through very carefully. But some of the things that you're bringing up today is something we need to go back and look at. But there is a bus stop. There is a Port Authority bus stop that stops right in front of our building, as well as we have some other partners that we might be able to provide some transportation that maybe even alleviate some of your problems. We'll be able to talk about it together.
All right, any other questions from the board?
I have a couple, unless...
Go ahead.
No, you...
What made you choose our area, Woodland Hills?
Give you the long answer or the short answer? I just feel that this was a calling for me to start a school for boys, and the location was just chosen to be able to help. We want to be able to help what's going on out east. I believe, again, a lot of people are being pushed out east, and I don't think the resources are out here, enough resources. So we want to be able to bolster. Instead of all the growth going to North Hills and Cranberry, we wanted to put something positive out east. And we believe that the Woodland Hills School District and others can benefit from something that's positive. So that's why we want to do it.
Okay. My question relates to some of the amenities that you mentioned in your presentation. The site is, as I understand it, in Penn Center is the proposed location. So does your plan include construction of new facilities? The Sportsplex, for example, Performing Arts Center, would that be construction at Penn Center? Is that
it will
what
be.
I understand? Okay. Have you been in contact with Wilkins Township about that at this point? Has that already been proposed?
Yep. Well, we have our developer here. He'll talk to you a little bit about that.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Larry Gumberg. I am president of LG Realty Advisors and previous part owner of Penn Center East, and I actually operated the Penn Center East for a number of years. I actually first came in contact with Dr. and Reverend Canaday about this program while we were operating the Penn Center East. I thought it was a terrific program, and some of the things that were particularly of interest to me was this wraparound of services that they're proposing as part of their program. You know, you all do a great job with those kids when they're in the school from morning till late afternoon, and then the kids go home, and some of the kids actually get all the way home, and some of the kids don't make it all the way home, and they get into some trouble along the way. I don't have to tell you, you live it every day. But what this program does, as far as what I could see, is it changes the focus for these students to show them that their peer pressure and excitement in life can come from education. Then they get the parents involved, obviously, and so it's a 24/7 educational process, not just a 8-hour-a-day process. Back to the issue of Penn Center East. After we sold the Penn Center East to the M&J Wilco folks, we started to talk with them about using one of the facilities that's there, that's actually built out already as a school, that I had built out for the Sanford Brown organization. They were doing medical training in Building 7. And we determined that we could pretty much get in and operational in this facility with very little changes to the buildings. There's also a great big parking lot adjacent to Building 7, and we determined that we could take a section of that and put some basketball courts in, and an extraordinary amount of unused land that most folks are not aware of, so 30 acres, where we could actually construct a field. So great opportunities there at Penn Center East. This will greatly improve the tax base of that facility, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I have a question on the tax base point. This is not a taxable enterprise.
No, this is not a taxable enterprise, but the existing Penn Center facility is.
So you're saying the value of Penn Center will increase because of the amenities added by the school?
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Okay. The second question that I have is not development related. It's actually, Mr. Koss, we've heard from you quite a few times this evening. What is your role going to be in the school going forward? And I ask only because it sounded as if you're from New Jersey, so I'm just wondering.
My role in the school has been to assist with the development of the application and perhaps professional development that may result once the school's in operation. But as we speak, I will have no role in the school other than as an advisor.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that for my own edification. Thank you. That's all that I have.
Follow-up question from Jamie's question, development question. Are you referring to the hillside that's directly behind the parking lot? That's the 32 acres?
It's behind the parking lot. It's at a different elevation. It's down a steep hill, yes.
Yeah. No, I could be incorrect, but last time I remember there were some issues with that hillside, that it wasn't stable enough.
There was a section of it that was not all that stable, and some of that would have to certainly be rectified.
And you've talked about that with the town.
Oh no, we're still working with M&J Wilco on issues like that, and then we'll sit down and talk with Wilkins Township on it.
Okay.
Thank you for paying attention.
I live there.
I want to go back to something that Mr. Graves asked. We had the Life STEAM Saturdays, and we had boys from all over the city, all over the area to come, and they were able to get there. So I believe that if you provide a top quality educational choice for students, that they'll find a way, their parents will find a way, or we'll find a way collaboratively to be able to get them there. But we had much success with young men coming from all over the city. We've done 2 programs. We've done one called the Architecture of Life, and we did that in East Liberty. And the second program we did, Life STEAM Saturdays, we did that on the north side at Carnegie Science Center. So we found ways, and parents found ways, and grandparents, to try to get them there. But I think that we could certainly use a way of collaboration to try to work through that.
Understood. It's just that I would think there's a certain demographic that would come to your those events compared to allowing it open to all residents in the district through a lottery process, because you can't control the demographics on a lottery process of what type of economical background a family might have, whether or not they have transportation, and all those things. So, yeah, I get that. Whereas if you volunteer to a certain event, then a parent is responsible of getting that. But then you're still catering to a different demographic than you would if it's more inclusive of the whole community. You know, because I mean, those are realistic questions in which we currently deal with. So I'm very familiar with the accessibility of some of our residents and some of our students, you know, because we have problems with if a kid misses a bus, sometimes a teacher is taking them back home because there's, from the high school. So that's after they called a parent or we're arranging an Uber or, a taxi or something. So those needs come up, but there are, certain demographics that don't have that capability. And are we going to be exclusive or are we going to be inclusive? So we go back to that term again and we say inclusive, but we're really not looking at the whole population as
the young men that participated in our Life Stream Saturdays were not young men that had well means. So by no means. We had some that their grandparents got them there. So it was not.
That's one weekend. I'm talking about every day.
No. I mean, I understand, but what I'm saying,
every single day for a whole school year.
It is open for all, and we're going to do everything that we can to include all. Okay. That's the best that we can do. You asked a question earlier about, you said when you make it a male school, you already excluded people. That's not, I don't agree with that statement. The school I went to, we have people who identify different ways, and they are still students at that university. So we're going to make sure that we try to include everyone.
Can I ask one more follow-up question? How many students were involved in the two camps that you've done at this point?
About 40.
Okay. 40 in each, or 20 and 20?
About 20 and 20. Okay. Yeah, we use it as a pilot.
Okay. Super. Thank you.
I have a question too. The grant for after school, is that going to be enough for all the students? I know you mentioned Woodland Hills struggles, with kids are going home and we aren't able to provide. We do have some after school, but 20 kids fit in this one, 15 fit in this. We don't have for the entire student population. So for your school, this after school, the 247, the Saturdays, is that for every student?
Yeah, we want to make it available, but again, we think that with the collaboration that we're going to be able to provide some additional money that's not coming out of the regular budget. So that's what we're going to be looking for to try to get some additional money so that we can include every child who wants to participate.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you, folks. We're going to open up the proceedings at this point to receive public comment. If you care to speak, we're going to ask if you can come up to the podium. Again, we'll need your full name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Darian Michael Totten. I live at 10 Totten, Totton.
Yes, excuse me. If you folks could spell your names for the reporter, that way we'll make sure we get it right.
Darian, Darien. Michael, Michael, Totten, Totton. I live at 1027 Cliff Street in North Braddock, 15104, around the corner. I'm a licensed social worker, and I work in the behavioral health field, and I've worked in schools for several years. I want to address some of the questions that were asked, and I want to address some of them in reverse order. You make a great point about transportation, and I think that some of your perspectives, really could be used on this side. I think that it'd be great to if someone like you, or if not yourself, would be able to work collaboratively with the initiative here. I do believe that we cannot base our future goals based upon the failures or inefficiencies of others. In that case, why make any school, right? If the kids are having problems, if I'm a teacher, why show up? To keep the lights off, right? The kids are dying, don't even show up to school with that perspective. So we have to press forward, and I believe this initiative proves that, or kind of represents that. As far as another question that was asked, what do you do with the discipline process when two kids are fighting? You know what? I think that you hire the appropriate staff, and you try to be solution focused and try to implement principles when you can. Another question was asked earlier, and I'm going out of order here, but it was about Dr. Kennedy's capacity or experience in running a school. And I think that a better question would have been, and it's a good question, but a better question would have been, what is your experience being an administrator? Okay, so because when you run a school or when you operate a school, whether you're a principal, whether you're a superintendent, you have to understand your demographic, your population, what their needs are, what strengths, etc., limitations, transportation, okay, and who you hire. So we'll go to another question that was asked earlier with regard to children with an IEP or a 504 plan. Is everyone here familiar with an IEP or a 504 plan? All right. Now, if a kid comes to a school, right? So if they put the mail out, hey, come on to the school. So the kids come, and 22% of them have an IEP. Okay, they come in with that IEP. So the IEP outlines what the educational needs are for this student. Okay, so it's the school, the teachers, etc. responsibility to make sure that this child is getting the assistance that they need per the IEP. So, with regard to keeping these kids, on task with the STEM curriculum. A lot of times IEPs have things in them where you'll have someone working one-on-one, right? You'll have a behavioral specialist come in the middle of the day, or depending on, hey, the kid might be nonverbal, okay? So they might have a one-on-one staff working with them throughout the day, okay? So I think that's typically the responses of schools. Schools don't typically have to sit back and say, hey, let's have an emotional support or learning support class. You can try to put them in the least restrictive environment educationally. So not limit their education by, putting them in those classes where things are kind of slowed up. Get them the one-on-one assistance they need with, for example, so that's a good one. So what else? I think that's about it. I have known Dr. Kennedy for about 8 years. How long have you lived in the area? About 8. Okay. And so I met him while I was doing a program at Pitt. We've been talking about this unofficially for a long time, and I have considered myself his unofficial, unpaid consultant on these on these matters. And if you guys, so I know a good deal about the school, right? So if you guys have, I'm not a representative of the school, but if you have any questions, I've talked with him enough that I'd be able to help assist and answer or address some of those questions. Please.
Thank you, sir. We're here for comment at this point, so appreciate your comments.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Conti, Conti. I am here as a representative as the senior pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church, which is in Rankin, right across the street from the Rankin Promise School, which is part of the Woodland Hills School District. I'm also a physician that works within the UPMC system. I just wanted to address...
Excuse me, sir, if you could state your address, please.
245 3rd Avenue, which is the church address in Rankin, PA, 15104.
Thank you.
A couple of things. As a physician, my expertise is taking care of patients, but I'm part of a larger practice where we recruit staff from all over the country. And so the question was about recruiting. And I would imagine that the plan to recruit would be similar to the plan we use, which is to use vetted entities who know what the local requirements are, and then begin to search for those individuals who either already meet or can easily meet those requirements. So we would not, I would think, claim to be expert in hiring academic individuals. We would hire individuals who would help us hire the appropriate people. One of the things I do know about Dr. Kennedy, he always loves the phrase, I know how to stay in my lane. He's the visionary with the plan, and that plan undoubtedly includes surrounding himself with the appropriate expertise. I think this school district is an example of how all of this is a work in progress. Woodland Hills 2015 looks nothing like Woodland Hills 2018 because it's a work in progress. You have a new superintendent, a new deputy superintendent, new building principals, new philosophies. I see Dr. Woods on social media 20 times a day speaking to the work in progress and the impact that it's having. So to kind of hold a conceptual plan to a standard that the school district isn't even meeting. The school district is constantly in flux, constantly asking questions, meeting, and solving questions. So I don't know that it's necessarily fair to ask concrete questions in a planning stage when the school district is constantly changing. So I would hope that the board would consider the fact that through some of these collaborations, we might be able to glean from your experiences so that we don't make the same mistakes and we can work together to make this happen. As far as the transportation is concerned, you have 94 stops, I think you said, and that's a challenge, but you meet the challenge because the law says you have to meet the challenge. So if there's a 95th stop, then that challenge has to be met through whatever means the Commonwealth deems. If it's every student has to get funding for transportation from their respective district from which they come, then that's how it happens. That's not us, that's not you, that's the law, until the law changes. Certainly, there are all kinds of technological and innovative partnerships that could exist between, say, Uber or Lyft or any other thing. They all have altruistic sides to what they do to make their company look better, especially the ones like Uber that now have lots of image issues. It would be great for an organization like Uber to maybe partner with a charter school to help get kids to school, or it sounds like the challenge is getting them home, get kids home. So in summary, I think this innovative idea is much needed. There's clear data that gender-separated schools address the unique learning environments that gender-specific classrooms address. Girls and boys learn many things differently. Girls and boys are often restricted in their thought process when they find themselves in gender-integrated classroom environments. So to create a safe space where genders can explore things that they might not necessarily explore. I gave the example, Dr. Kennedy, earlier today that, say, a young man is interested in the visual arts, but at the current gender-integrated school, everyone else in the visual arts club is a girl. He's not likely to want to join the club, not because he doesn't want to do it, but because he's afraid of the stigma of being the only guy in the class. But in a gender-segregated school or gender-specific school, all of the needs of the school still have to occur. There are going to be clubs and student government and all these other things that now that student may be inclined to feel safer exploring in those environments. So I think with the question of the legality, we have to look at that. I don't know the answer. I don't think anyone here knows the answer. And Pennsylvania always seems to be different in how they think through things. But if it's something that can be feasibly and legally done, it certainly addresses some of the needs of all of our male students, not just the brown ones, but certainly in a school district where our young men are struggling. And my children are in the Gateway School District, but I pastor students in the Woodland Hills School District, and the problems are the same. The challenges are the same, and so I would hope that we take into account that this is in an infantile kind of state, although it's been very well planned and organized and presented. But I sense the tone of some of the questions. We're holding this entity to a standard that the school district hasn't held itself to, and that's the fact that it's a changing thing. Because if you all were rigid in your thought process, we would still be way down here and not making our way up here in terms of statistics and data. And that required people to think outside the box, to ask difficult questions, and to be willing to go in other directions. So I would hope that we remember that as we think about where we came from just 5 years ago, 10 years ago, where this school district was, what its reputation was, what its teachers were, what people thought of the teachers, the disconnect between the community and the school district and the school board and the school building administrators, and where it is now. It wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had innovative people and creative thinkers to take us there. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Greg Rogers. I'm a professor. I live at 201 Wood Street, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 15222. Say a few things rather rapidly in support, and also to ask you to know that there's a saying. I worked in intelligence, by the way, for 40 years. So unlike the ones on TV or the talking heads, we are not accustomed to public speaking. We stay in the back, recruit spies and things like that. But I can say to you that perfection should never be the enemy of good. So if you're looking for perfection, sometimes you forget that the good can come up only with your help, assistance, and approval. So you're in a very unique position. I can tell you that there's a thing we call the legacy of Jim Crow that is out here and very powerful. When I go to recruit, I see probably everybody's white that we end up getting, one or two blacks, and I said, why don't you learn a language? They said, I can't. A Russian can speak Russian even if he's an idiot. So certainly this person could learn a language. But that legacy of Jim Crow is still there, telling him you can't do it. I can join the infantry. What about being an officer? Oh, I can't be an officer. This is an opportunity for not only black males, brown males, Mexican males, and others, white males, to say, hey, I'm not only different, but this place can teach me things that I can't learn somewhere else. So I understand there's other issues. And those issues, I am not even familiar with because I teach at the university level. They're already there, they're paid, and I teach them. And I wasn't exposed to a lot of this. I was very lucky. I grew up in D.C., went to private schools all my life. When the agency, everything was happy. I didn't realize the problems until I actually came here, retired, and started teaching. And it was like, oh my God. So I met Daryl. I actually joined his church, which was different. But anyway, I realized he had a vision that wasn't perfect, but he's attacking something that is the root of problems in this country, where people look at it and say, well, what about that clock? I've been looking at that. It's broken, but it's right twice a day. And nobody ripped it down because it wasn't working exactly right. And so I ask you to look at yourselves when you look at things and say, well, how can we approve it if you're going to approve, but it's not perfect going in. It's good, I think. But I think you can say to yourself, well, transportation, how are we going to do that? What other things can they do? I mean, I know he belongs to organizations and people that can do a lot of things. And if you want to have that communication with him, I think it's easier to work with him. I try to keep this down to 2 minutes, but I get emotional because I don't get to talk often. Are there any questions of me?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is B.J. Sampson, and I live at 5516 Rippey Place in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio. I moved here several years ago, but before moving, I was a medical social worker at Children's Hospital. I worked at Child Psychiatric Hospital and Guidance Center and the Dayton Board of Education before moving here. I moved here to get my master's in social work, and I did, with emphasis on mental health. Since that time and up until June the 7th of this year, I worked as an outpatient school-based therapist for a major mental health organization that services mostly children. In my years, and more currently this recent year, our children are not learning. In the traditional classroom, we all know that Malik and Ruth and Abraham and Shaquika, they're not learning to read, which requires the school system with a multi-million-dollar budget to do different things. And it would be so wrong for our community leaders, our boards, and other advocates for children to not recognize that our children are not learning and they need something other than the traditional classroom. I agree with you, Mr. Harris, in reference to children with ADHD, IEPs. Those were the children, those were all of my clients. And I've had parents tell me, don't call my home anymore, telling me about my son who's unruly in the classroom. In this school where I was a school-based therapist, 85% of the teachers and staff were all white. And there was not one black male there in a role model. I'm sure that possibly does not exist out here in Woodland Hills, but it does exist in certain public school systems. And yes, there is a definite need to have black male role models for our young black boys. We do not have it. We are suffering because of it, and we're turning our heads as if it does not exist. No, it doesn't exist for some persons who are willing to allow our black males to not succeed. But I stand before you and any other school board system to tell you, until we address this issue, that our kids are not learning in the traditional setting of the classroom and recognizing the ADHD, the IEPs, that are also there and still not working. We know that. Those are the clients that I had every day of my life. And there's got to be another answer. Because if we decide that programs such as the Life Male STEAM Academy is not the alternative, what are we also saying? Are we going to give up on our kids? I hope not. I hope not. And I hope the Woodland Hills School Board would allow the Life STEAM Academy to at least begin to show you that they can make a change. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Franklin Robinson, and I live at 515 Stokes Avenue in North Braddock with another residence at 317 Albert Street in Turtle Creek. I am a 54-year resident of Woodland Hills. I am a product of a single-gender education. And I want to address several things because I find it fascinating that we've forgotten some things we got right. When I went to the Ellis School, Woodland Hills provided a bus pass for me to get to school. Port Authority. That is not, transportation is not an issue. You understand what I'm saying? It's a problem you've already solved. So that's not a problem, in my opinion. I'm coming to you, I sit in several contexts. One, I am a very good friend of the Kennedys. So these are people who are steady, they're measured. Their lives are lives my children, I would love them to model themselves after. They've successfully raised 2 children, and they get it. I also sit in the context in that I am a lifelong resident of this community. And I was one of those nomadic students here, meaning we were moved around and around, did half-a-days here, half-a-days there, sat in a classroom that the ceiling fell in on me. So I was in the early stages of the General Braddock School District. I'm also the mother of 5 children, 2 of girls and 3 black males that went through Trinity Christian School, but my last son opted to come to Woodland Hills for his last year of high school, where I would say pretty much he was destroyed by some things that went on. So we have to, so when they say they're going to emphasize help for African American males, that's not exclusivity. That's saying that we're going to pay attention, special attention, and understand the needs of that group and help raise them up in addition. Because being an African American student, particularly in a private school, sometimes you are overlooked. And so the fact that they're willing to pay attention to that, in addition to have other students, I think is a good thing. Like I said, the busing isn't an issue. I'm also the mother of a special education teacher. And they have explained that there's a partnership that they want to develop with University of Pittsburgh. Well, University of Pittsburgh has this beautiful program called the Mosaic Program, where they provide, they train special ed teachers, and these teachers have to do internships at schools, that they can actually do an internship at this school alongside another normal special ed teacher. I concur with Dr. Conti. I thought it was really, really amazing that we would present them with questions and problems that we haven't gotten right at all. And I can attest to this because, like I said, 54 years. Failed schools for me. I had to leave. I would have loved, my parents would have loved to have had an alternative like this to send my brother to. But instead, they had to pay for him to go to Swissvale High School because at the time Woodland Hills hadn't grabbed it. So they had to literally pay money to send their child to what they felt was a better public school education. The other thing I want to lift up is, let's talk about exclusivity. You were lifting up the fact that you're being inclusive when you say you're a single gendered school makes you exclusive or you're excluding another group. These students sit in the greater society. I can say for myself, going to the Ellis School, not having to worry about certain things with respect to men and peer pressure and things like that, it left a certain freedom for me to be able to learn. There were also other emphasis on that they lifted up for me, that as a woman I can do anything that I put my mind to, that as a woman I can learn anything, that they wouldn't pick a male student to answer a question over me as a female. So I have, as a woman, I know I have certain needs or certain ways that I learn, and I felt like that was met in a gender single gendered school. It was well met. This school is a pilot, and it would be great if they could kick this off and maybe one day even add a girls' school for this area. The thing that I really want to end with is, one more thing. With respect to the parent participation, there's a charter school known as the Neighborhood Academy, and we looked at it for our children. Our children ended up going to Trinity Christian School for most of their education. But I noticed they had a parent participation model that it was met. And the parents who wanted to send their children to the school agreed to participate in that way, provide meals, transportation, and other things. And in the age of technology, to be able to have a conference with a parent, that you can't have a conference with a parent, to me seems ridiculous. If they have a smartphone, they can FaceTime you. They don't have to actually come to your school to have a conference. You can just do it over the phone. We can FaceTime. There's lots of ways technology allows us to interface with parents. And so to sum it all, I think that we need to listen with ears and have a heart that's open to something that's going to come alongside and help with what you're trying to do in your school. Because Woodland Hills needs all the help that it can get. And if there's a group that's willing to take and shoulder the burden, and African American males have so much trouble in this school. I mean, you saw their heads being smacked off of ground and smacked off to the side of the room. And I remember my son even being harassed, and the 504 plan that was put in place that never was followed. So all I'm saying is, if we have an entity like this group that's willing to come alongside and help us to be the best school district and to actually make it so other people want to actually live in this area, then I'm all for it, and I hope you will support it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Natasha Pettis, NATAUSHAPETTIS, 826 Key West Drive, Plumboro, PA 15239. I am a member of the Rodman Street Missionary Baptist Church. I am a single divorced mother of 2 children, one girl 11 and one boy age 9. I know firsthand how it is and was to be raised in a single parent home. I know the devastating long-term effects it has on a child when a father is not present. My son does not have an active father in his life, but he does have his pap-pap, and y'all, he is crazy about him. Although pap-pap, I call him Rev, is not my biological father, but he is my daddy, and he is his pap-pap. When it's time for bring dads to school for donuts, it's pap-pap who attends. Whether it's games, practices, dances, or school conferences, Pap is there. The harsh reality of it all is Pap is old, and he wouldn't mind me saying this. Pap can't play like he used to. His steps are slower. Pap sleeps sitting up. 1 minute he's talking, and the next minute he's asleep and snoring. But I thank God for Pap. My son is a good kid. He's respectful, kind, and loves to pray. But we all know as mothers, we raise our daughters and we spoil our sons. No one knows the tears that hit my pillows at night because of the questions of where, when, and why. When there are classroom discussions about dads, that triggers negative emotions which cause my son to lash out, which affects his ability to focus and sometimes remain in the classroom, which ultimately affects his grades. My son is hurting. My son feels he's not good enough. He feels left out. He feels rejected. And most times he feels unloved. This is not something that I've read about or seen on TV. This is my life. I've been taking my son to the same barbershop since he was 3. I'm there for at least 2 hours each time. I'm talking sacrifice now because I can cut my son's hair, but he needs male stimuli. I suffer having to listen to grown men be loud and obnoxious. Sports TV is up way too loud for me. They sing songs all off key, and most of them are of different faiths. And conversations, as y'all know in the barbershop, are not kid-friendly. But they are manly men, and my son enjoys being around them. These guys are always concerned about my son, and he is greeted as soon as he walks in the door. Sticks, and that's what we all call them. I sacrifice my time and travels back and forth from Plumboro to the city just so he can play sports and to be around more positive black men. These coaches teach him not only how to be a good athlete, but the fundamentals of the game. These coaches teach and help him to focus, have eye contact. They tell him, pick your head up. They also encourage him. When he used to pout during the game, I used to want to come to his rescue. And they would look over in the stands as if to say, Mom, don't you come down here. We got him. So at this time, I would step back. My son needs to see a representation of himself. He needs to know and feel the teachers will love, care, and invest time in him. I believe that the Life Male STEAM Academy will add value to his life. I believe the school will give my son confidence. They will teach him how to walk with his head held high. Encourage him that he can do and be anything. It is going to be more than just an educational facility. It is going to be a safe haven for my son and those boys who may feel they have no one. So in closing, please think about all that was said on here tonight. Think about the boys that will become men. Good fathers aren't born, they are taught. Then they can grow up knowing how to be great men, and now they can pass the torch. And in the words of Dr. Dale T. Kennedy, if we can save our young boys, then we can save the family. Thank you.
I shouldn't have let her come before me. But my name is Cheryl Allen. I live at 2535 Red Oak Court, Allison Park, Pennsylvania, 15101. I've come here tonight because I know Pastor Kennedy, I know his heart, and I know what he is trying to do, and I support it wholeheartedly. Just by way of background, I was once a public school teacher. I was a lawyer. I served as a judge in juvenile court for 12 years. I served as a judge in criminal court for 5 years. And then I ended my career on the appellate court, the Superior Court of Pennsylvania. I am retired. And I'm older than all of you. And I say that because I remember when Woodland Hills first came together after a court order. And I remember I was a juvenile court judge when that happened. And I remember all the challenges you faced trying to bring children from Churchill and Forest Hills and Braddock, and I remember the reasons why Woodland Hills came together. And part of the reason was the fact that there were students in poorer districts such as Braddock, North Braddock, if you will, Rankin, who were not receiving the same quality of education as students in, say, Churchill or Forest Hills. So the school district was formed by court order for purposes of providing an equal access to education for all students. You've had many challenges. You've worked very hard to overcome those challenges. And any school that starts is going to have challenges. And I have to say this, I really agree with some of the previous speakers that it's not fair to ask Pastor Kennedy how he's going to handle an individual discipline problem or an individual academic need. One thing I know about Pastor Kennedy, and it's been said here today before, he is a visionary. And the fact that a person who is the visionary is not necessarily the one who's going to carry out the vision. Part of being a visionary is having the wisdom and the skills to hire and bring into the system people who know how to handle special needs children, or people who know how to handle discipline problems. People who know that discipline problems have to be handled within the school, not juvenile court, as some school districts have sought to do. And I also want to say this, I also serve as a board member on the Neighborhood Academy, since that was brought up. And the Neighborhood Academy, just in September of this year, opened a middle school for all males. Why? Because before that, it was a high school. It was a prep school for college. But they opened the middle school starting in the 6th grade strictly for males because they recognize the special needs, if you will, of African American males. I believe that all children have special needs of one kind or another. And I believe that the strength of a school such as what Pastor Kennedy is talking about is to meet those special needs. Pastor Kennedy has stated that African American males are underrepresented in the STEAM system. Unfortunately, they're overrepresented in juvenile court. They're overrepresented in the criminal justice system. They're overrepresented in the foster care system. And we can sit here and act like they can't be treated as a group, or someone cannot have the motivation to meet their needs because that's exclusive. I'm sorry to tell you, that's not what the prison system says. When people go to prison, oh, we have too many African American males. No one says that. So let's face it, African American males in our society have needs that can be solved. They're on a trajectory that can be stopped with the right educational background, with the right emotional supports, with the right psychological supports, with a culturally sensitive, relevant education. Because education makes the difference. Neither one of my parents graduated from high school. But education made the difference for me and my brothers and sisters, and many of my friends. No, the school will not be exclusive to African American males. However, please do not penalize Dr. Kennedy or the school for wanting to focus on the problems that African American males have in this society. We can't deny that. Yes. And so I just believe that, one other thing, I do want to address the transportation issue. Because even if this school was a completely private school seeking no funding, no collaboration from Woodland Hills, you would still have to pay for the transportation to those students to that school. because that's the law. And, you know, it's not something that should be an issue for you, because when it comes to young people, you do what you have to do. So I just want to say again, and I can't say it enough, I believe that this school has a real great, it's a great idea, it's a great concept. I believe that many young men, be they black or white, will be served through this school. And I do believe that, and I want to emphasize the need for a culturally relevant, sensitivity-based school for African American males. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Aumann. I reside at 407 Jacunda Street. That's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 15210. Aumann, A-U-M-A-N. Okay. I'm not African American, but I am a member of the Rodman Street Baptist Church that is predominantly African American, and never once did I feel uncomfortable stepping into the doors of that church. And everybody in there has always made me feel like family. I have 2 children, and in 2026, I will have a boy that's school age. So I come to you not as an educator, not as a senior pastor, not as an administrator. I'm a mother. And I currently have a child that's in charter school, and she attends the Manchester Academic Charter School on the north side, in which a community raised me. So I have an influence on my child that I have good relationship with. And my son and my daughter both attend church, and that church has a very large group of children. It takes 6 minutes to get them from service into youth church. And that's not because the senior pastor doesn't make things happen. And I know it's only a church and it's not a school, but that's where a vision starts. And I feel like if you give him that chance, he'll be able to identify and help correct the issues that you were voicing out of how to fix. Because I think he came to you guys with a vision that let's focus on all these issues, on all these concerns, on their end, on your end, on the parents' end, and bridge the gap and come together. That's where the village comes in, and everybody takes part of these issues. Because I myself was a single mother for a very long time, or for as old as my 8-year-old. And I don't always have all the means that I need to make things happen, but I make them happen because someone else in that village might have something that I lack, or I myself might have something that somebody else lacks. And I'm an involved parent, and that vision is the vision I have for my own children. And there's no more there's nothing more passionate than a vision that a mother has for their child. And I just feel like if you give them the chance and the opportunity to make this vision happen, you will see improvement and you will see correction, because they have passion, and they don't have children that are going to attend this school. They want to make passion happen. They do it, the passion that was given to them through a call. And you don't get that. I'm sure you don't get that with the school district that you overlook now. So I think you should strongly take that into consideration and just give them a chance, because all it takes is one chance to change a lot. Thank you. I have nothing else to say.
Good evening. I am Reverend Dr. John Robinson from the New Hope Baptist Church, Braddock, PA. The address is 445 6th Street. That's 445 6th Street. Braddock, PA 15104. Services are at 10:45 a.m. I was trying to think of something profound to say, and I just kept hearing, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. But in all seriousness, I have to say that there are some things that I disagree with the crowd. I'm glad that you've asked these difficult questions. I'm glad that you've asked a question about transportation. I'm glad that you've asked a question about an IEP, a 504 plan, a question even about the Hill. The reason why I'm glad that you've asked these questions is because the one thing that I do understand about Dr. Kennedy is that he is a man that knows how to get things done. And I believe that every challenge that you've presented to him, that if you don't collaborate with him, he's going to find a way and make a way to get them young people to that school and even get them back home. I know that when there's an issue relative to those who are in different type of physical disputes, he's going to find a way and make a way to have the right type of staff to build relationship with our young people, because we all know those that are educators are committed to draw out what's on the inside of our young people, which is education. Amen. I said amen because I'm a church man, you know. But the thing that we know is they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. It's important for us to understand, as we are people who are invested in this community, not just Braddock Hills, North Braddock, and all of the other surrounding areas that are committed to this Woodland Hills vision. It's important for us to understand that we do in fact have to work together. This is for our kids. And just as you have placed on the wall, whatever it takes. Can somebody just say whatever it takes? Whatever it takes, our kids are worth it. And I think that that's something that we have to stick to because it's evident that there are some things as it pertains to certain demographics that some of our schools just can't do. No different than our church systems, we are focused on a model that no longer works. And it's necessary for us to make a commitment now, because we have said whatever it takes, our kids are worth it, that we are willing to think outside of the box. And I believe that this particular school is going to do just that. Think outside the box and continue to adopt your mission, whatever it takes, that these kids will be worth it. And they will do whatever is necessary to pull out of them, to draw out of them the gifts, the talents, the skills, and the abilities that are necessary for them to reach the crown that they talk about in their pamphlet. And so I want you to really consider what this man is going to do. I believe it's going to be great things, and it'll be because of you and your willingness to do whatever it takes that we can turn our community around. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, excuse me. Ma'am, before you begin, yes. Susan, are you holding up okay? It's hard to keep up with the preachers in the crowd. All right. As long as you're okay. Go ahead, ma'am.
I was about to say I had to follow a preacher. Good evening. My name is Vivian Wilson, W-I-L-S-O-N. I live at 1220 Crescent Place, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 15217. Several years ago, Michael Brown was shot and killed in St. Louis. When Pastor Kennedy came from his vacation, he was livid. And he said to us that God told me to save the boys. And that is what he is trying to do, is save the boys. I'm here to talk about the board that supports Dr. Kennedy and Reverend Kennedy. I'm a member of that board. I'm a retired elementary school principal from Pittsburgh Public Schools. I taught for 14 years. I was a supervisor and then a principal. Since then, I worked for the Department of Education as a distinguished educator. And it was our task to go around the state of Pennsylvania to low achieving schools to improve achievement. Woodland Hills was one of my districts. So was Duquesne, so was Wilkinsburg. When Dr. Kennedy and Reverend Kennedy created this board, they chose several educators. Some of the questions that you asked tonight can be answered by those of us who have ran schools. I was principal of 5 schools. And I can assure you that with myself and people like Dr. David Griffin back there, the questions that you answered can and will be addressed. I know how to improve student achievement. I know how to deal with discipline and how to engage parents. So I just want to let you know that this is not something that they just kind of just thought about real simply. We have worked on this for several years. We've considered all the standards, both Pennsylvania standards and court standards and everything else we could think about. And it is important that our boys learn to respect themselves, to have self-esteem, which they clearly do not have, but they would not be doing some of the things that they're doing. And when Dr. Kennedy says to save the boys, that is what we intend to do. And I hope you give me that opportunity. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Dr. Melvin Steels, capital S-T-E-A-L-S. I am a retired principal. I retired from the Seneca Valley School District 2004. I know your solicitor, and he probably knows about me. But before I came to Seneca Valley, I was in some other school districts. I started in Aliquippa, where I taught for 21 years. And if you are someone who likes oldies, if you've ever heard the song, Could It Be I'm Falling in Love by the Spinners? I'm one of the writers of that song. And because of that song, I took a year off to pursue music and utterly failed, which meant I had to go back to teaching school. And if you teach school, if you take a sabbatical, the school district has the right to change your teaching assignment. Before I left, I taught American literature, 11th grade, with an anthology. Had most of the very good students. When I came back, the school district changed my assignment to American novel, gave me a room filled with blue chip football players, and I'm an avid reader, and there was chaos in the room. And then, much to my horror, I discovered that those young men could not read. And it upset me so much I did 2 things. I took 3 of those young men and put them in a reading and study skills program at Duquesne University. All 3 of them, graduated high school, went to college. One of them was National Honor Society. He got accepted to Columbia University. But when I put him in that summer program, he, unlike the other 2, was able to go to that 3rd day. All 3 young men had reading problems. This young man who was going to Columbia, Dr. Brennan at Duquesne found he was reading at the 9th grade reading level. But going that extra day for 6 weeks. At the end of 6 weeks, Dr. Brennan tested him himself, and this young man had brought his reading level up 3 years. Graduated from Columbia with a 3.2 grade point average, and made it possible for my son to get into Wharton, so he paid me back. And I say that to say this. These kids are much smarter. Another one of those young men, I saw him and his brother at a funeral. When the older brother saw me, Herbert, he came up to me and he hugged me. Then he took 6 steps away and he turned around and looked at me and said, "You know what? I said, what? He said, you need another hug. And he came back and hugged me. Then his brother came up, who was the football player, hugged me, and he stepped back and he said, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be where I am today. When I was in your 11th grade English class, I had a 0.6 grade point average. And he went to that program. He got a full scholarship to Ohio University, graduated from Ohio University, and is now a successful businessman in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have worked. After Aliquippa, I went to the Pittsburgh Public Schools. From there, I went to the Freedom Area Schools, and I went to Quaker Valley, where I worked for 4 years. First year as a junior high English teacher. Then I became an assistant principal at Quaker Valley. In my last year at Quaker Valley, I was the acting principal of their first Blue Ribbon Elementary School, Osborne. And prior to that, I had never worked in an elementary school. And when I got in that school, I found out that the PSSA scores had dropped the year that the school became a Blue Ribbon school. And I had the unenviable task of getting those test scores up. Unfortunately, I had an encounter with someone at the school district who said some things to me that made me do something that I swore to God I would never ever do. And that was to go back to Aliquippa. But when I left and went back to Aliquippa to become the principal of that middle school, I found out that under my leadership, the scores on the PSSA test went up significantly, which showed me, because my mother was born in 1909, my father was born in 1903, both in Alabama. They came up in that migration. I was conditioned to accept second or third class citizenship. I didn't know that I was mentally gifted until I took a doctoral program at Pitt. And I've been gifted all of my life. And I say this to say that. When I left Quaker Valley, I went to Aliquippa. That middle school was in the bottom 5 worst middle schools, or the whole school district in the state. However, at the end of 2 years, we got the test scores up. So much so the state gave us over $10,000. On May 3rd, in 2000, I was invited to the governor's mansion to receive the Violence-Free Youth Challenge Award for the state, for Aliquippa Middle School. And I had murderers in that school. When I went in that school, there were 7th grade boys that had a gang. They were running the school. And I can thank Pittsburgh Public Schools for staying right out. He came with me and taught me how to change that school. So, someone said earlier, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Wherever I have been, it's gotten better. And I'll say this one final thing. Our kids, when you think about what happens to a saltwater fish when you put them in a freshwater environment, they die. Life Male STEAM Academy is an environment in which you're going to put salt. People like me wouldn't have made it unless someone took an interest in me. And I just met this man yesterday. And I drove all the way up here from Beaver County because I see the vision. I know I'm 72. I might not be there when they get there. But given the opportunity, I have no doubt that this program can succeed. Thank you for your kindness.
Dr. Steele. I'm sorry, we did not get your address on the record.
Okay, my address is 18 Lamplighter Lane, Lamplighter, and that's in Baden, PA.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Dr. William Simmons. I am at 310 Ruston Way, Wexford, Pennsylvania. I am associate professor at the University of Pittsburgh and a frequent visitor to Pastor's Church. I wanted to let you know, because a lot of the questions that you were asking pertains, and there are things that I could answer. For the last 9 years, we have been running an academic mentorship program for African American males from the inner city of Pittsburgh. It is called the Journey to Medicine program. We started this program because the physicians, the black physicians in western Pennsylvania, wanted to have more physicians here, and it was very hard to try to recruit them, so we thought we would grow them. And the reason being that, and the thing that we ran into problem with was that African American males had a 58% graduation rate from high school. It's up to 62 now. And the other problem was that those that did graduate, very small percentage went to college, and the ones that went to college didn't take science, technology, engineering, or math. So if you look at any master's program, PhD program, I teach at the University Medical School, and I'm on the admissions committee. The medical schools, they're 2/3 women. If African Americans are involved, they're primarily women. They're not men. It's the men that are not going to school because they have been disenfranchised through much of the process of the school. We have 110 boys from the 6th to 12th grade where we augment what they learn in school, science, technology, engineering, and math, with the idea that we wanted to make them college ready, not just graduates from high school. And we have, in addition to that, building self-esteem, giving them an opportunity to dream again, because even by the 6th grade, many of these young people have stunted their expectations for themselves. They don't have any dreams of going and being a physician or being a lawyer or anything of that nature. We had to start from scratch, and there were a lot of emotional overlay that we had to deal with these kids as we built them up, and step by step, and changing curriculums as they go, to the point where by the time they got to the 8th grade, they all were at least, I would say, in the honor roll. 80% of our boys are in the honor roll system. We have 3 cohorts that have graduated from our school, from our mentorship program, and gone to the college of their choice. In the senior-most group, we have 2 kids, one who has just gotten accepted at the University of Pittsburgh Medical School. He is a single mom situation from the inner city of Pittsburgh that would have probably never gotten out of school if he didn't have mentorship. Male mentorship to black males particularly is valuable, and it's worthwhile. And this is the thing that we have been seeing, the kind of mentorship that we have been doing, not only in that program, and I have another young man who is gotten into a business school and so forth. So they're constantly seeing beyond what their vision was. They can see outside of the box that they've been put into in their life situations because of mentorship. And I've had young men in the program that I've had to go to the magistrate and get him off of whatever zero tolerance charges that he was on. 2 of them, matter of fact, and we were able to successfully do that. So I have seen the steps necessary to do that. So all I'm trying to say is that this process works. I have documentation of all of the things, because we get grants, so I have to document everything we do with these young men. And so that the changes that I've seen in them and their families have seen in them when they have male mentorship involved in their lives is tremendous. And all of them, as they go through that, they go on and they have visions of going to college. And they go to college for free. They all get scholarships. Why? Because when they go through our program, they end up with SAT scores that are much better than the average score. And their grade points are usually above 3.5 or above. And so I'm just saying that the action of trying to get a light male STEM academy or getting some situation where men can be interacting with African American men would be life-changing to these young people. And I truly want you to consider it.
My name is Kitty Johnson. I live at 215 Woodside Road in Forest Hills, PA 15221. A lot of people probably is not going to like what I have to say. First, I want to start by saying I am not for or against your program, and that's just because I don't know enough about it to make that determination. But I'm going to tell you one thing. I was born and raised in Braddock. My husband as well. We purposely stayed in the Woodland Hills school system to raise our kids because they had everything we wanted for our kids. I've listened to a lot of people here, and we're given the stigma that Woodland Hills can't offer anything, and I totally disagree with that. I have a girl who graduated from high school from Woodland Hills who did graduate with an IEP and went off to college. I have a boy who graduated last year and actually is at college playing baseball as his major is physical therapy, and that's a lot. He just got his grades, this afternoon, babe? This morning? 3.2. Okay? When he comes home from school, the first thing he did was came home, hopped in the shower, went to the high school to help the wrestling coach out with the wrestlers. Okay? So no matter what, even though my kids are no longer in the school system, we still constantly give back to the school district. Now, I do agree that all kids learn differently, and that we do have to figure out a way to help African American kids as well as white kids, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is, first of all, is that Woodland Hills have a high rate of homeless kids in this district, and I'm not sure how many people realize that. Woodland Hills have a high rate of kids whose parents are under the influence of narcotics. Woodland Hills have a high rate of kids who come home to no lights and nothing. So when our board asks questions about transportation and IEPs and things like that, this is why they're asking. They're not asking these questions to be rude. They're not asking as if these are invalid questions. They're asking because for one thing is these are questions that's going to be thrown at them, that they're going to have to be the ones fielded. They're asking these questions because they know the makeup of our district and what our kids have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So with that being said, I think that it's unfair to state that it's unfair for our board not to ask these questions because they are valid questions. As a parent, I think, and I know this for a fact because Penn Hills had this problem where some of their kids, it was taking them an hour and a half to get home for transportation. So I completely understand his transportation question. You know, who wants to wait a whole nother hour and a half for their kid to get home or an hour and a half for their kid to get to school, which means they have to wake up earlier. You know, we already don't know if these kids have eaten or not. There's a lot of things that come into play that I think that the school, the life mainstream needs to take a look at. So my big question too to you is, how feasible would it be for your mission to be incorporated with the school district as opposed to separate from the school district one? And my other question is, how bad would it decapitate Woodland Hills by pulling these kids out? Because I know if we have a drop in enrollment, we also have a drop in federal funds. Am I not correct in that? So how would we paralyze the school district by creating this school within our district?
And ma'am, if I could, this isn't an opportunity to go back and forth and ask questions at this point. This is limited to comment. So your questions are noted for the record. Dr. Kennedy can certainly, provide some sort of written response if he cares to. But this isn't a debate at this point. It's limited to comment.
Okay. So, okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dr. J. David Griffin. I live at 1823 Howell Street, North Versailles, Pennsylvania, 15137. After listening to everything that has been said, I recognize that there is validity in what has been stated, and I applaud the folks who stood up here and gave their indication of what they believe and what they think is fair. I also want to say that, like Judge Allen said, that I was in Pittsburgh whenever the inception of Woodland Hills High School came into being, and it was an awesome challenge presented to all 5 of those communities that came together to make up Woodland Hills. It also represented challenges that were beyond the scope of those who from the state level, mandated that district to become a reality. So I want to say to you that your struggles have been recognized and your achievements and accomplishments have been recognized. But in this educational world today, having spent 46 years in education, both as a public school teacher, as a counselor, as a dean of students, as a president of Allegheny campus for Community College of Allegheny County, I used to say and still submit that after God, the single greatest equalizer we have in this society is an education. And what we need to deal with at this time is not that we are in competition with those that exist, but that we want to be a part of helping them reach their goals. And I think that our grasp should exceed our reach. And when I say that, we should always be looking to raise our level of integrity and abilities to train and achieve for all of our students. Now, the lack of academic achievement for all students, and in this case particularly African American students, is not predicated on the fact that they are intellectually incapable. It's predicated on the fact that they are socially and emotionally vacant in many areas, and that precedes our academic achievement levels. Okay, we need to be about the business of putting desire and application into the mentality and framework of every student that comes through our school districts. Now, the reality is this: mass education is an unbelievable undertaking, but every educator knows that their one goal, if they could have it, would be to individualize mass education and give more individual attention to every student. Okay, that in many respects is difficult to achieve in a major school district. What Dr. Kennedy has envisioned is that if we can take a portion of that pressure, a portion of that responsibility, and move with it, we then become partners with you. We grow and we achieve at the same levels. Okay, and I think that's. I'm not going to give you all of the data, but I'm aware of instances that they found that block scheduling basically is an achievable notion, but it can't be done basically in large school districts. And with block scheduling, students are engaging with each other, and it becomes a student-centered learning experience as opposed to a rote classroom teacher-student existence. And I must tell you that I've seen it work, and it does work, and that's one of the things when you talk about what Dr. Kennedy is going to do with some of the issues that we're related to, that he's related to, and you've asked questions about, then that's one of the ways in which we can achieve it. Because in a smaller environment, you can deal with issues more relevant to each individual student that you have coming through. And that's not an indictment of the public school system. We need it. But we also need to raise and open our hands and our minds and our thoughts towards what could help and what could improve the way we attempt to educate our young. Okay, again, I want to tell you that wholeheartedly, I would not endorse anything that I thought would take away from the achievement of any school district and the ability of any school district to do their job. What we are attempting to do is to take a segment and work in partnership with you so that we can both see a rise in achievement. We can both see a rise in academic behavior. We can both see a rise in students staying away from that pipeline that from high school to prison. We want to do something, and by doing this, we have an opportunity to work together. I want you all to think carefully, not necessarily the dollars and cents and the nuts and bolts, as to the ideals of expanding our ability to individualize and work with every student that we possibly can. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Wright. My address is 581 East Pittsburgh Street, Greensburg, PA, 15601-8880. Any other information is on a resume I submitted about 2 years ago. It's probably one of the trash cans around here. I did want to respond to a few things. First of all, the court-ordered mergers that were referred to earlier. This was a part of the Judge Weber decision, and you know a lot of districts around here were forced into merging, and it was due to a majority-minority student population in one of the districts, so they had to be brought together for desegregation purposes. You also referred to 94-142 mainstream education, and Dr. Kennedy has all types of resources. I've got over 30 years of educational experiences. I was principal at Steel Valley School District, Woodland Middle School for 25 years, and I did my final 8 years in the Wilkinsburg School District. I was recruited by Homestead School District, one of the school districts involved in the Steel Valley merger in 1968, which was immediately following the assassination of Dr. King. I also was an advocate for charter schools and presented in Harrisburg in favor of charter school legislation. There was a question about discipline. Now, there's a correlation, very strong correlation between school suspension and school dropout and failure. And it's directly related. So when we talk about discipline, we have to be very careful because it generally applies to African American males in particular and increasingly African American females. So if we want to educate kids, we got to keep them engaged and keep them in schools. You might want to take a look at a database for discipline. where not only you categorize and document behaviors of kids that are not accepted in the classroom or school environment, but also responses of professional educators to those particular activities of the kids, so that you will have an outline, an idea as to not only what the behaviors are in a particular class, but also the response or reaction of professional within those classrooms. I endorse this program, I support it, and he's got a wealth of educators experienced to assist him. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ron Lawrence. I currently live at 1647 Oakleaf Lane, Pittsburgh, PA. I am the current chairman of the board of the 100 Black Men of Western Pennsylvania. We are a mentoring organization, and we have worked with the Pittsburgh school systems in the area for the last 30 years. I've spoken to Dr. Kennedy several times in regards to this issue, and I can only say that we need the input and the impact to occur with our kids. That's the thing that I'm mostly concerned about. We've been doing this for 30 years. My kids all came through the Pittsburgh public school system. And of course, they had a lot of parental support, so we were able to succeed with them fairly well. But most of our kids don't get that kind of support. I grew up in Jim Crow South in Mississippi, and I was told by a lot of people that I would only become a common worker, okay? I went on to school to become an engineer. And I just retired as a transit engineer in transportation, where I worked on projects across the world, around the world. And I know what it would take. And we had a village, as Dr. Kennedy is speaking of, that helped to raise us and focused on us. So I know if our kids get the right attention and the right support, it can happen. And I'm not here to plead Dr. Kennedy's case one way or the other, but I do know that if we get behind a program that's going to focus on our kids and their issues, we will make it succeed. It will succeed. I can tell you that already. Okay. We've seen it happen many, many times in our own group. Our motto with the 100 Black Men is they can be what they can see. So we show them role models of folks who can make it happen. And if that happens with them, what happens with us, you can make it happen with them. So I can only say that I hope that the board would seriously consider something else that is going to put a focus on our young men that will help us to help them to achieve. Thank you so much.
All right, folks, so that brings us apparently to the conclusion of our hearing. On behalf of the board, Mr. Harris, we appreciate the comments, many well-spoken, and the board will take into consideration those comments as it reviews the application. As I indicated earlier, the board will need to render a decision on the application no earlier than January 31st or later than March 2nd. The board does have the option of having a second public hearing if it decides that is necessary, but otherwise we're probably anticipating action on this application sometime during the month of February. So again, thank you all for coming out tonight, and with that, Madam President, we can close this hearing.
And with that, we adjourn. Thank you all so much.
I don't like it's on my side.
I'm sure